almost forgotten about it because it was instantaneous.
Yeah.
In instances, people didn't see cash flowing into the accounts. They just didn't see cash flowing out to pay for BAS liabilities. And so people have kind of played on, but when they actually reflect on it and see where their cash balances are sitting, there's some pennies to drop there, I think.
Yeah, somewhere between you get 0 or you get 20,000 or you get up to 100,000, as you said. That is significant. So
it's tax free, non-taxable. So it's a double whammy double benefit where it's 100,000, which is worth somewhere between 170, 190,000 if you're getting the whole whack.
Mm-hmm. And back to the confidence side of things. Obviously, we all know what's happening in Victoria and how's it going to play out. Just don't know. But I think even people over here are just thinking, oh, geez, Clive Palmer, borders, they can't be closed forever. It's going to have to come back in at some point. This virus, what do they do? Keep going out and spending or not? Don't know. But debt's being reduced, we've seen a lot of. But having said that, you talk about the cars, caravans, the holidays, the leisure industry within Western Australia is doing reasonably well.
And you can't go and buy a road bike out of a bike shop.
Tell your story about you.
No, yeah, it's only quite minor, but just wanted to get a bike service. The 3-week wait to get a bike service. It's a 45-minute job. So
too much liker on the roads.
Greg, I've got a bike in my garage. I haven't been moving. I walked it down to the bike shop to get service. They said we can't even take your bike physically in. You're going to have to come back in a couple of weeks. I walked home and I haven't been back. My bike's still sitting there not working.
Oh dear. Yeah, well, I called my local bike shop and cancelled, and they were relieved because they're just overwhelmed. That's just a very small example. Does anyone have any other questions or comments at this point? Because what we want to do now is just show a quick little video, and then we'll kind of wrap up with some open discussion. But any questions or queries at this point? No, all good? Okay, I'll try and get this thing fired up. Bear with me again.
There's something missing from this pandemic: departures or corporate insolvencies. There aren't any, or at least not many. And that's weird and scary because in 7 weeks' time, there'll be an insolvency dam that bursts. Virgin famously went broke quickly, but insolvency accountants tell me their work has collapsed from the usual 700 to 800 per month to half that. And that's because the Corporations Act was amended at the same time as JobKeeper was brought in March to allow businesses to trade while insolvent for 6 months. It's usually an offence. And that ends on September the 25th. Demand for air travel and tourism has virtually disappeared. The number of passengers in all Australian airports in June was 828,660, a fall of 93.5% on June last year. But there are thousands of businesses that depend on people travelling, like airport retailers and restaurants, security firms and caterers, people who make the uniforms, and the private car parks that line the highway. But some other data is showing that trouble is brewing more broadly. The average delay in paying invoices across all industries has blown out from 11 days to 49, and some sectors, like this one, have virtually stopped paying. Basically, the Safe Harbour Amendment is keeping thousands of zombie businesses from going to the wall until September the 25th. Insolvency practitioners say they're bracing for a tsunami of insolvencies after October. One told me he wouldn't be surprised if 100,000 businesses went broke. You know how many registered liquidators there are in Australia? 650. And a lot of them are semi-retired. So they simply couldn't handle the rush. The banks couldn't handle it either. Temporary safe harbour plus temporary loan deferrals allow the banks to pretend the loans are okay. But once a borrower goes into administration, the pretense ends and the loan has to be written down or off entirely. And one final thing, insolvencies caused by the GFC peaked in 2012, 4 years later. And that's what always happens. The average time between a business actually going insolvent and admitting it is 18 months. So if the safe harbour from trading while insolvent isn't extended, or perhaps even if it is, there's going to be a long, catastrophic wave of corporate insolvencies that will lead to higher unemployment and pressure on the banks.
So we were going to show that at the beginning of the session, but we thought he would have stolen all our thunder. So, you know, Alan Kohler, yeah, he's a journalist and he does like to, you know, make headlines and like, but he's pretty balanced and quite...
Dr. Norman Swan,
sorry,
you always have some way of making us understand this a little bit better.
There with us. Norman's gone. Yeah, so that's so where is it going? We just don't know. You know, Mark's got his comments. Yeah, can't argue with that. But will it happen? Don't know. You have to see where things are at. But what we are just suggesting, just make informed decisions, which is what we've said forever in our working environment. To do that, you need your balance sheet, profit loss, and your advisors to guide you on it. At least they've then got their options. So that sort of sums up where we are at with it. So summary, we're quiet. Get few inquiries, mostly non-COVID related. And that's happening around Australia, we've heard. We've heard that, you know, in fact, there's quite a few insolvency practitioners that are actually on JobKeeper themselves. So it just shows how quiet a lot of them are. But it will change, we just don't know when. And we'll have to try and be there to help people that need help financially.
Great, thanks Kim, thanks Greg. Does anyone have any questions? You just need to unmute yourself and you can speak.
Yeah, maybe one question. You guys being quiet at the moment. If you've got clients that, you know, you're seeing some evidence of stress, you know, you've probably seen it almost before now, but the opportunity to get you guys in early sort of now, well, I think, you know, it seems like, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a good opportunity, but if it's there, or are you better off waiting to see how things pan out?
Well, what we say typically is that the earlier people come to guys like us, the more options there are. Because as we say, we'd like to be the corporate doctor, but we're often the corporate undertaker. So they come in with just, there's little choices. So yeah, we encourage people to go to their advisors, and that includes guys like us and Helen, to come and have a chat and see what the options are. You know, if that light at the end of the tunnel is a train and they have to go off the tracks, well, they might say, well, I'm still, you know, I've got a few people employed with the JobKeeper, I might as well keep going until I can't keep going. So they're all individual circumstances, but definitely we encourage people to come in, and as you know, we think is going to happen, is that when people do come in and there's going to be lots of auctions of whatever it is, you know, cafe equipment for fridges and stoves and all the like, instead of having, you know, a few on the market, there might be dozens on the market. So the asset values disappear. You know, seat tamers, you know, we get those occasionally, but we're going to have dozens and dozens of them. So again, you know, it's a bit hard to say, oh, come in and if you're going to close the doors, do it now rather than later. But often the case is that, particularly the SME side, they've got borrowings from banks and they're connected to the security on their houses, and if they close the door, they lose their house. So it's a very difficult one.
Yeah, no, I can vouch for that. And just from some of our clients that we've referred to, Kim and Greg, over the years, they're very approachable, very easy to talk to, very empathetic with the clients. We've only had positive feedback from that experience. So
I'd second that, Malcolm. My firm's done it quite a lot with Kim and Greg, and I get the same feedback about the approach. I had a question, Kim and Greg, about just in relation to zombie companies in this current moratorium period. Do you think that VAs, and in particular holding dockers or hibernation dockers, there's greater opportunity for those now, or perhaps when the stimulus ends?
Potentially, but they're quite costly.
Yeah.
You know, simple liquidation these days costs $10,000 to $15,000 with an administration, voluntary administration. You're talking sort of 30 or 40 or 50,000. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's largely because of the meetings we have to hold, the compliance with ASIC. It's just what we have to do. So for the bigger companies, yeah, they'll be there, but for those others, they often can't afford it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Aaron. Anyone else? Any other comments? No, I think I've got to hand it back to Radi now.
No worries. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for listening. It's interesting, and it's glad to get a few people on and get a bit of feedback.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kim and Greg. My real takeaway from this, in addition to all your, everything you know about insolvency, is the empathy and the kindness. It's a really beautiful thing to be able to say out loud that you are, and that you're people. Thank you. And that was echoed by Aaron and by Malcolm, our wonderful MC. I really, really appreciate that. It's beautiful quality. And so is there no one else with any other questions that or comments that they would like to put forward? Jamie, you're not muted. Anything to say?
I was actually really interested to listen to you today because
Can't hear you. Sorry.
Get out. Okay. Sorry. The mic's not working.
So. Oh,
that's
good.
It's working now. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was really interested to listen to today because I've always wondered when that point where businesses are on that knife edge, when they're going to fall off and become insolvent.
Okay.
Getting that kind of an update is very important.
Sorry, Jamie, you need to come closer.
Is that better?
Yes.
It's the microphone, not the camera, you goose.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's
all good.
Hopefully we got a screenshot of that one for sharing. Oh, okay. Well, thank you everybody for coming. I think. Oh, Scott. Someone's got a question. Go.
Sorry, can I just chime in before we go?
No, don't be sorry. Find me something pretty.
I'm not sure if it's for the HLB guys or perhaps a property guy, but April, May and June rent, commercial rent, I'm fighting with my landlord over at the moment because unfortunately it was also my last 3 months of my 5-year term. So there's not a lot of incentive for him, obviously, to do the right thing as I'm exited. Well, I have left now. Is there any advice or direction you could point me in or anything?
I might field that one if that's all right, Kim and Greg.
Yeah.
I'm just advising a client in a similar position whose lease ended on the 30th of June, and you're really not in any different position to anybody else. The only real difference is that it's a prohibited action, generally speaking, for a landlord to try and terminate a lease now or issue default notices when they would ordinarily be allowed to do that. If a landlord tried that on with a tenant at the moment, you could go straight to SAT and prevent that from occurring. But unfortunately, under the legislation, usually in most leases, when your lease ends on, say, 30 June, there's a clause in there which says that there's a holding over period. So you can hold over a month-to-month tenancy. And the legislation doesn't encapsulate that. So if you're in that area, then they can foreclose on you and terminate the lease. But coming back to your broader problem about the rent for March, April, was it March, April, May? Was that right? You just need to, it's pretty simple, and I can give you a precedent letter that you're welcome to use if you want to do it yourself, is you just have to write them a letter that ticks all the boxes under the legislation. There needs to be a formal request for rent relief that needs to set out what your revenue has been over the period and needs to provide substantive documentation. And then that triggers the 14 days in which they've got to respond to provide you with a formal offer. And then when you get the offer, myself or another lawyer could have a look at it for you and say, well, this is fair or it isn't. Some landlords have been very fair, but others are really trying it on.
Okay, appreciate that. I wouldn't mind that letter, actually. I'll give you an email.
Yeah, no worries. There you go, adding value to your members, Rowdy.
That's what we're all about.